All right, welcome everybody to the Garage Door Podcast Lab. This is episode number 2. I'm your host, Andy Felice of Garage Door Marketing Lab. Today, we have the pleasure of having Mr. Stuart Eisler, owner of MasterCraft Garage Doors, with us. Stuart, how you doing?
I'm doing good, thank you.
I'm super happy we could connect on this podcast and talk, because in our last meeting, you shared with me you guys had a stellar year. Talk to me about that. And the reason why I want to talk about this is you had incredible growth, and I want to show other people that they can have incredible growth too. You just got to take a couple steps. You kind of got to be a little bit more like Mr. Eisler here, and that's how you have some success. But tell us about your success, Stuart.
Sure. So 2025, record-breaking year for us here at MasterCraft. So we ended up end of year being at about 35% over 2024, with about a 16% net profit margin, which is pretty strong. I think the average is in between 10 and 15. 20 is really, really killing it. That's the goal. But very, very happy with the success that we saw through last year. And there was quite a few things that we changed and implemented, and tweaks. None of it's rocket science, but it's those little nuanced things that can make a big difference and have a real impact.
I've been working with you for over a year, and to see that growth is really exciting. Makes me really happy. It makes me feel fulfilled, honestly, is how it makes me feel. What were, like, in your mind, some of the things that you did that got you to 35% growth? Because you're unique. Your background, you're really intelligent. You've got an engineering background, I believe. Like, your approach is really something that I admire.
I think one of the major changes that we made that had the largest impact overall was defining roles for each of the our employees. And what I mean by that is, previously, and this is how, when it was just me 10, 15 years ago in a truck, I did everything, right? And as we grew, I moved more into office and hired people to replace me in the field. But I really had them doing the same thing that I was doing, which was everything. And so the main separation that we've done and are continually working on is, in the garage door industry, you kind of have 3 different things, right? So you have install, you have service, and you have door sales. And all of those things are something that a competent, technician, garage door technician can do all of those things. Where we found really good success is separating all of those things out, so that a employee in the field can focus on just one of those. It seems very nuanced, but if you think about it, you have a guy go out and install a garage door in the morning. And so, it's a 4-6 hour job. Arizona, it's hot. You get done with that. You've been focused on that all day, all morning, and now you're going to go to a service job. And while the work is very similar, the mindset has to then shift to, much more of a customer-oriented sales approach, and building that trust, that rapport. They didn't have to do any of that all morning. And then, say after that, now they go over to a garage door estimate, and now they're having to switch gears again, and they're having to turn into more of a sales mode, but also more of a listening mode, and really spending that time to understand the customer's needs, what they're looking for, what their budgets are. And so the work itself always remains very similar, but the approach to dealing with the customer is very, very different across all of those. And it's a nuanced kind of a thing. But we, by separating those roles, it has made a huge difference on ticket conversions, the total, ticket averages, and the overall customer experience, because when we show up for a particular need, they're getting somebody that is focused specifically on that. We are a smaller company, and so there are challenges with doing that, where you might be saying to yourself, well, I can't afford to have a full-time salesperson. They're just not going to be busy enough. And so we have married some of those things together, but we're not having, say, an installer go and do estimates. So we'll have somebody that takes all of the estimates, and they also then will take any kind of overflow service. So it keeps them busy all day long. But because their primary focus, and they're the only ones that are doing estimates, they're getting the most reps on that. And it's much easier for them to have to switch gears between those 2 things than if you had somebody that are doing all 3 of those. So really trying to define, roles and isolate those to individuals. And the same goes for, the back end office. So mid-year, we hired our first CSR. Before it was, one of those things, well, I can do all that, and I can do okay at it. After training our CSRs, I'm actually, the worst, because I know too much, and it really just doesn't make sense. But we ended up hiring a second one to get full coverage, because we saw, the benefit of having somebody ready to take that phone call, ready to respond to leads, and that's all that they're doing. I also took one of our more senior technician sales guys, Nigel, and made him general manager. And so that pulled a lot of responsibilities off of me onto him, and have allowed me to work on process, procedure, and marketing. So it's really a top to bottom narrowing of the focus for each employee and what they do, so that they can become, experts at what they do, instead of being just competent at everything or a much wider scope. And I think that has been the largest impactful thing that we've done, on top of stretching out times. And I don't know if you want to get into that or not, but that was something else that has really made a big difference for us.
I want to put a pin in that, and I want to come back to it, because I love what I'm hearing about really making everybody focus. Like, as you grow, when you start very, gunslinger. Like, yeah, I can sell that. I can do that. Whatever it is, and you're kind of just doing what works, whatever's the least barrier to entry to make progress. And what you're saying is really just niching down each individual by their role, so you don't have to turn them into a version of yourself, which would be a lot of effort.
Yeah.
Can you tell everybody like some context? So, because some people might be listening to this being like, wow, I really can't wait until I get to that point. And then they understand, oh, wait, I can actually do that a little sooner than I thought. Can you tell us about like, how many trucks you're running, stuff like that, just to kind of quantify it, make a little sense for our listeners?
Yeah. So we have 4 trucks that we're running. We have 2 CSRs in the office, and then we have a general manager. So we're running a total of, what's the quick math on that? 8 people, and then plus myself overseeing, everything.
Perfect. And what would you say is your commercial to residential split? Are you 80% residential, 20% commercial?
I would say 95 residential or higher.
Got it.
And that's kind of another thing too, is walking away from jobs, right? So we could do 15, 20%, or more commercial, but as somebody that's just doing it yourself, and you're starting off, you're going to take whatever money you can get, right? Whatever jobs you can get. And that attitude becomes a little bit of a problem as you start trying to scale. And so, for instance, I'll just give you an example. We're going to go do commercial springs on a door. So we don't know what's going on. So we send a guy out there, and he's got to stop by the shop to get the big ladder, because we don't carry a big ladder on every single truck. Then we get there, we do our inspection, figure out what he needs. We got to order springs. We have to go pick the springs up. We have to come back. It takes 2 guys. The ticket ends up being higher than what an average ticket would be. But when you take into account 2 different trips and tying up 2 guys on the second trip, the profit margin just becomes not worthwhile. Or another just quick example is we sold some very nice wood overlay doors. They wanted them stained. Well, hey, we can stain doors. And so after staining it about 3 times and sanding it in between, we got it dialed in just the way the customer wanted it. And so yes, we made money on it, but it was very, very inefficient, because we were really kind of going outside of our scope. And so I'll argue with our, or debate with our general manager. Yeah, we can do that. Like, we have the ability to do X, Y, or Z, but it's very important to define here is what we do, and just narrowing that down, the rule of 80-20, right? Focus in on what is making you money, what fits in the process and is very efficient, and stick to that. And don't be afraid to just say, you know what, we don't do that, or we don't do, this part of the job. Let's get you referred to an expert, because it's going to be better for not only us, but the customer. I mean, we had to take that wood door down, 2 times and sand it in their driveway. They're super happy. We got it perfect. They stuck with us, and it's excellent. And it was a very good ticket, but it ate up 10 times the amount of man hours that we originally planned for.
Yeah, it's a lot of effort, a lot of resources to put in to get one customer for life. I mean, I'm sure they're not going to go anywhere forever, get them on an annual maintenance program, the whole deal. But there's more efficient ways to do that. And I feel like that type of, it's almost like maturing, like as a business owner, as a leader, when you realize, you come to this realization that all money isn't good money.
Right.
Sometimes it's, let's pick and choose so that we can be more profitable over the course of 2 years instead of just this week. Can you think of a time, or like, do you know when you kind of made that kind of transition, or did you make that kind of transition? Is this something that you can relate to, or just tell me what your thoughts are.
Yeah, so it's interesting because it's actually something we are constantly struggling with, right? Because as a small business owner, things get a little bit slow, and cash flow becomes difficult. A slow 3 days is a real bummer for a smaller company, right? And then the next 2 days can be cranking and everything's perfect, right? So there's a lot of that. And so when you have those kinds of scenarios, I'm not going to sit here and say, yeah, I've just decided, and my discipline is 100%. It's something that you're going to have to struggle with, I think, for a long time, until you're built the company and scaled it to a place where you're kind of removed from those decisions, and policy just as policy, and that ever even makes it up to you. Because my general manager will come to me and say, hey, we have this customer. In fact, we had one the other day, and we literally were having this discussion like 20 minutes before, and then he comes to me and says, hey, I had a customer that called. He has one of the flip up screen doors that goes behind your garage door. So you can have your garage door up and have it screened. He wants to know if we can, just take that down for him. And so I said, well, Nigel, we just had this discussion. I mean, what do you think? He's like, well, I mean, we could do it. Now we're having this discussion again. And so we're, literally 20 minutes later, we did decide to go ahead and do it. Right. So I said, okay, we're not super busy today. Let's send a guy out there, do that. We'll make a little bit of money. We'll put a sticker on the door and hopefully build a customer for life. But we run the risk of, he gets out there, tracks have to be removed and a bunch of stuff at the door. We pull it down, we put it back together. Now we would charge accordingly, but now you're also married to it. And there's a whole can of worms that potentially, you could open. The examples I gave before about going outside your scope are extreme, but those are less of the issue, because all of those, with the wood door, we made money on. The problem is the little things, so you send a tech out and there's some electrical going behind, a buck. And so he wants to go above and beyond and say, hey, I'll just reroute this for you. Well, now you own that. It took you an extra, 30 minutes, not to mention you're not licensed for it. And there's a liability
Liability.
associated with it.
Yeah.
Right. And so those decisions are much more impactful, in on the regular basis, with just kind of the run of the mill, little things. The wood door example, like, we did make good money on it, but it's just a glaring one that, is a good example for why not to do that in the consequences. But that trickles down even to the small stuff, because all of those little things add up. And I have this saying, if you take care and do all the little things right, all the big stuff just falls into place. And so if you can make policy that, hey, we don't go outside of our scope, it's not what we do, we'd love to, and we'll work with you to help you find somebody. Like, we want to serve our customers, but we don't want to end up being a disservice to them by doing things that are not in our process and procedure and could potentially be problematic for ourselves and for them.
Absolutely. Yeah. The liability that is associated with that, as well as like all the little tiny things that can clutter the system. So you got your CSR, calling and dispatching people, calling people that submit forms from like leads that we generate for you or what have you. And if that technician arrives at a situation where it's like, wishy-washy, sometimes we do this, sometimes we don't, I'm going to call, and you get the CSR that's newer and they don't know the answer. And so that's another, touch point that has to happen
Right.
of her or him asking another person, like Nigel, your manager. They can just create a lot of inefficiencies and just kind of bog down this machine that we're working so hard to create that just operates on its own. That's the end goal that we all want to get to. And it just makes it hard. So I love hearing about your policies, and you're right. This isn't all black and white, just snap my fingers and I'm perfectly disciplined. It's a lot of vibe, a lot of gut feeling. This week, we're really slow. Let's take that job, and then next week, hey, we're back into a good place. We're going to start turning those away. So it's not just like a perfect clean, sometimes you got to be a little bit scrappy. But 35% year over year revenue growth, that is just huge. Tell me a little bit about like, average repair ticket. That's something we've talked about a lot, and booking rate. So like how your CSRs answer the phone, and then how your techs ethically upsell. as that's big important part.
Sure. So I'll start kind of at the beginning of the chain. So the CSRs, so we have two in the office. We kind of overlap them midday so they can do outgoing, those kinds of things. Their booking rate is 85, 83% on the average through last year. So that is very, very good. I expect that rate to go up this year because the data I have from last year, I only had a CSR for about 5 months. My goal is to hit at least 90% is what the goal is. And we've made a pretty straightforward process for them to follow, what they need to say, what they don't need to say, and try and keep it very straightforward. We want them to not feel super tied to a whole bunch of rules and stuff. So their script, for incoming phone call, it's not more than a page. It's very, very basic. Act like a regular person. If you need help, ask for the help. So booking rates are very solid. Our average ticket is around 1100, 1150. I think we're probably a little bit underpriced, doing some market research as well. So I think going through this year, we could probably get that closer to 13 to 14 is what my gut is across the board there. The way that we do sales, so, and I kind of alluded to this earlier when I said the time that we allot. So the other very large change that we made to the system is that we stretched out the amount of time that a technician has allotted to be on site. On top of that, we made clear that the job that they're at is all that matters. If they're going to be there all day long and they have a book schedule, we'll rearrange it or reschedule it. It's something that they don't need to think about. It doesn't exist. Now, I'd like to get to a point to where they can't even see their next jobs, but it's kind of a different logistical conversation. So by giving them that amount of time, what we've been focusing on is repairs are easy. I mean, even your longest repair is about an hour. We give them about 3 hours. And what we want is for them to spend an enormous amount of time up front, getting to know the customer, going through the problems, finding out what the pain points are. We want to understand what they were doing when they discovered the problem. I was leaving for school, take my kids to school, and the door just wouldn't open. And, I was freaking out. And I ended up having to have my neighbor take, this person, I missed day of work, so I'm waiting for the repair, have somebody come out, really understanding the customer, how long they're there, when's the last time they had it serviced, and really, just building up our knowledge base for that particular customer so that when we go to not just sell them, and I hate to use it in the way that it sounds. Sales gets this dirty word, but everything in the world is sales, right? It doesn't matter what it is that you're doing. So we'll tailor what we're going to offer them based on what we've learned from them. So they say, hey, we've lived here for 10 years. The house is actually up for sale. And we're hopefully moving out here in the next month or so. We're going to always give them all the options. Number one, there's a liability issue there. And some people, that's the route they're going to want to go. So we always offer everything they need regardless. But then we'll also tailor packages for them where this is going to make sure they pass inspection and obviously their door opens and, this gets your house sold, no problem, right? So just kind of as an example of how that upfront time allows us to build good packages for customers and, more importantly, build a rapport and a trust with the customer. So when we go to present to them and go through the inspection reports and those kinds of things, there's no question of the efficacy of what we're offering. The other shift that we made about 3 or 4 months ago is that we address the reason for the call to start with. So most of the inspection is going to be spring system, bearings, things like that, stuff that you can kind of see, but you can't really inspect it until some things are taken apart. So generally what we'll do is we'll go in and we'll address the reason they called. My door won't open. Okay, we have a broken spring. Let's check that out and see what you're going to need, what sizes. So we'll go to them and we'll say, hey, you obviously have the broken spring. We've discussed that. Here's what it would cost. This will get your door working today. Once I get into it, I'll go through the rest of the internals on the spring system. And if there's anything else that needs your attention, is it okay if I bring that to you? So it tees them up they're going to get a second knock and we're going to, bring to them if there's anything that needs to be addressed. And once the customer's already agreed to make a purchase, adding to that purchase is much, much easier for the customer to make that decision. So much of sales and, and this works on both sides. I mean, because I look at myself a lot of times when I'm going to buy things, right? And I'm doing the same thing that we're working towards. And so it's very nuanced mindsets money and costs, that's all state of mind. I won't say it's not real, because money's obviously real, but the way that things are presented in the order that you present them, having the customer agree to a purchase upfront that solves their immediate problem, and then coming back to them and offering them other solutions that they may need, has dramatically increased the tickets. And it's something that I kind of struggled with personally for quite a while. This is something that a lot of other companies would do. I had a hard time deciding whether or not it was ethical. And that was a conversation that we had with the team over months before we decided to go ahead and do it. And a good salesperson can be very dangerous or very helpful, right? And it depends on whether the person is ethical or not. So if we walk into a garage and we see that there's a broken spring, and we see that the opener, gear assembly is all broken off the top of it, we're not going to withhold information from them to try and corner them into getting that first purchase, and then telling them they must also now spend this money in order to have their door working. So an example of that would be, what I just stated. We sell them the springs, we put the springs on, door goes up and down manually, but their opener still doesn't work, the system still doesn't work. And then we're coming back and, basically at that point demanding that they have to do this other work if they want their stuff to work properly. It's a slippery slope, and it's something that we watch very closely. We use a software called Rilla that allows us to kind of do real-time, ride-alongs, and we can talk about that in a moment. But that approach needs to be managed, and the guys that you have working for you need to be ethical people that their first priority is to help the customer and be honest and treat people right. Because there is ways where the second knock can very easily, that process, be used in ways that are not right. And so after having these discussions over time, and my guys are great with here's some procedure, and they find like that one weird outlier. Well, what if this happens? And that's another interesting to talk about, thing to talk about when you're talking about procedures is you can't build for that. But so making sure that your guys are ethical, using it in a proper way. We found that the second knock process has really increased ticket averages, along with allowing them to have a ton of time to just do whatever they got to do. If a guy needs to be there all day because he sold all kinds of stuff, I want him there all day. I don't care about the next job. We care about the customer that we're at right now.
That's huge. The giving more time to the technician to do the job and to communicate, probably more to give them some buffer so they can communicate and not feel stressed. They can think about it real quick first and kind of just do their thing and not feel like they've got a lot of pressure to go on to the next one. I think that's a great idea. I've not encountered my other clients doing that, but that's amazing. I'm going to noodle on that some more. But something I really like that you said is you were reflecting and thinking about this, we'll call it sales process, this new sales process of the second knock strategy, we can call it, to do the ethical upsell. And like, very serious when we say ethical, you gave it a lot of thought and you talked to the team about it. That's something really cool. Did you get buy-in from your team, or did you have to convince them of this new methodology? Because I experience a lot of pushback, mostly from garage door company owners that are a little bit older, have experienced the marketplace in a different way, not accustomed to how the marketplace has changed. So tell me a little bit about how you went about doing that, because that's a big thing. You kind of glossed over because you're going this way, but I want to talk about that real quick.
Yeah, and I guess just to clarify up front, there's a big difference, I think, from a B2B standpoint, where you're dealing with a business owner and trying to convince him of something and get buy-in from him that, hey, this works, and being able to get your team to buy in. So there's a process that I use now with the team for. It doesn't matter what it is, policy, reviews, sales process, our mission statement. The way to get buy-in is to include them in the development of the stuff. So if I am, working in my office for weeks and I come up with some new whatever, right? Now I have to go to the team and I have to sell it to them. And I have to try and get that buy-in from them and use, different tactics to try and do that. And it's very, very difficult if it is stuff that they don't understand or they, just kind of disagree with up front. I don't like the second knock, or whatever it may be. And so what we've started doing is, and we started with when we went through and updated our mission statement, is that I was going to write a mission statement, bring it in, see what people thought, got their feedback, adjust it. And in, just doing some reading and just kind of research and things like that, what I found was include them in it. So what I did is I set a meeting, we're going to make a mission statement, and we started with a blank piece of paper. And I had ChatGPT actually help me with just a bunch of just questions, and I gave it to everybody and we went through it together. Everybody answered the questions. I didn't ask for them to tell it to me. It's just we explained what the questions were. They wrote it all down. And then at the next meeting, we went through everybody's answers, because I'm trying to dial in what is it that we do, what makes us special, so we can put this statement together. And what I wanted was not a marketing statement, but I wanted a statement. It didn't have to be pretty. It didn't have to sound, like I said, marketing, but I wanted it to be something where if a guy is unsure about something, either ethical or whatever it is, they can just fall back to what does this mission statement say? And they can just make a call if they can't get a hold of a manager, right? So I wanted something that had real world application, and I wanted it to be, the cornerstone. This is what we live by. This is how we do things, right? And so the guy's in the field and he's got a problem, the customer's upset, he can't get a hold of a manager right now. He can just look at that statement and just make a judgment call, and we'll back him on it. And so by bringing everybody together, we spent about probably 5 weeks at each of the shop meetings. We do a weekly shop meeting, and we dedicated the whole shop meeting to working on this mission statement. So after about 5 weeks, we as a group have formulated, 3 or 4 sentences that we all agreed really encapsulated what, we stood for and what the company was about. And so I went ahead and added it to the handbook. I didn't have to acquire buy-in. I didn't have to convince anybody because all of them had a part in making it. And there was times where we were kind of disagreeing in this and that. And, we came to agreement or we changed it in a way where we both agreed. And so we really kind of bypassed that step that, owners and managers will have where they're struggling to try and get a guy to do X or believe in X. And we were able to do that by letting them create it with us. And we've done the same thing now with the sales process. We utilize that. And that was very helpful for me because I'm not in the field all day long. I'm never in the field. I am not, hearing what people are saying. And, so by having them help us put that together, because I knew where we wanted to go with it, but by having them help me actually make the process step by step. So I'm saying, well, let's do this. And they're like, well, normally, the guy will, do X, Y, and Z. Great. That's excellent. I didn't know that. And we make the adjustment. So when we get to the end of any of these processes or things that we're doing, if you're including your employees in a meaningful way, it's got to be real. And in some instances, I was the guy that needed to have the buy-in, right? Like, are we sure? Like, you guys are all telling me the same thing. I'm going to trust you. If it doesn't work, I can always change it. But especially in instances like that where you acquiesce to, the group is saying X, and I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to trust you guys on it because you're out there every day. That's an immediate, not just buy-in on that, but buy-in to you as an owner and as a leader. That's very, very important, where people feel like, not just that you're listening and all of that, but you believe them, you believe in them, and you're willing to make policy, based on that. So buy-in, I feel like we've really kind of sidestepped it for the most part, where if we're able to just include them in whatever the project is and in a meaningful way and have them help me create these things, buy-in's not even a thing I have to worry about.
That's amazing. There's a quote, I don't know who says it, but culture eats strategy for breakfast. If you can make a culture that is united, they're loyal, they feel connected by doing the things that what you're just talking about, you can create a culture that can do anything that will get you to, the well-oiled machine that we're all working towards a heck of a lot faster. We can't do it alone. We got to do it together. I think that's an excellent way to get people involved and not have to worry about their buy-in because, hey, you made this process, you're not going to stray away from it too far as you made it, so it makes it a lot easier.
And it helps with that accountability. If process isn't being followed, there's never, I didn't know, or this or that. It's like, hey, I'm sorry, I messed up on that, because there's no excuse. Like you said, they helped us make the whole thing, right? So across the board, that's been a huge, adjustment that we've made. A lot of business owners, and I was this way, to a certain degree, where, I'm the boss, I'm going to do this and you're just going to do it. There's a lot of, things should be this way, or I shouldn't have to X, Y. None of that matters. There's the way things are. And then there's what's within your power to control. And that's it.
I love that. It's like extreme ownership, Jocko Willink right there. if you're familiar with that book or
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
He's a Navy SEAL. Awesome, man. You're crushing it on processes. You're crushing it with your culture. Another space that I think that you crush it at is with technology. Technology is evolving pretty aggressively right now. It would be a travesty if I didn't ask you about AI. So, can you just tell us a little bit about what do you do with AI? Do you use AI in a garage door company? Tell me a little bit about that.
So I think we all agree AI is the future. Most of us don't know how exactly it fits in. I would encourage everybody to just try and fit it in wherever you think it could be to figure out where, it's going to be successful, because it is the new, the new internet, if you will. And you could try 20 things, and if you get one right, you're going to be ahead of 99% of every other company out there. The first thing I did is I created just a custom GPT. It sounds complicated, but it's not. A quick, YouTube video will show you what to do. What I did is I took processes and procedures, and for the technician specifically, and I put it all into a custom GPT. So basically, I took all of our documentation and uploaded it into Chat GPT. And then I shared that along with there's some instructions, configuration. We'll just kind of skip past that. But what it allowed for is if a technician said, I have a warranty here and I don't have this LiftMaster part, what do I do? And they could ask ChatGPT and it would tell them exactly what the process says that they should do. Documentation, LiftMaster's phone number, all the different things that we have laid out to handle that. Or if a guy said, I need to request some time off, what's the proper way to do that? They could ask it and it would tell them exactly what to do. And so it sounds super awesome, but what I found is that it was kind of useless. And the reason for that is that the text, we would go over it at shop meetings, hey, this is here and all of that. But the problem I ran into with trying to utilize it in that way is that they need to ask a question. So if they're doing something wrong in policy or whatever, if they knew it was wrong, they would probably know what to do since they've helped create most of the policies. And we have a very good training program and they carry the policy book with them. But there wasn't an AI watching them saying, hey, that's wrong. You need to be doing X, right? So they needed to proactively utilize the system. I don't want to call it a fail, but for the purposes, it was a fail. I've found that I personally use it a lot, that same custom GPT where I'm wanting to update a process. And since it already knows all of my processes, I talk to it. I use the mic, talk to text, and I'll say, hey, I want to update this process. And here's kind of how I want to change it. And you can have a conversation about how to change it. And it knows the context. So it'll scan it knows all your documents intimately. And you can use it to adjust that. Where I found a lot of success, I can't even measure it, is in website work. I do a lot of my SEO and website work internally. And building process documentation, I have probably saved years off my life of work by using it. And to be frank, most of it probably would have never got done because it's so daunting. I'm not a reader and a writer. I don't enjoy that, not strong at it. I can do it, but so some of these tasks that I've been able to complete, I would have never done because it's just too daunting. And utilizing ChatGPT, I probably spend about, if we just averaged it out, about a fourth of my day utilizing it now, especially with updates and building process. We still have process to build, but it allows you to go to it and just say, hey, I need to create a process for ordering garage doors. And I'll just dictate to it what that process is, like what we do. And I just say it like a regular old person, like I'm describing it to you. And then I hit go and it lays it out in a process form. And one thing to really understand is ChatGPT is not perfect. And so you can't just do that and roll with it. So I'll read through it and I'll say, oh, this line doesn't really make sense, or maybe it's wrong. And I'll tell it, let's adjust that. And we'll go on and on and on. And so I can pump out, 10 pages of pro level process and procedure in a day, no problem. In the past, that would have taken me weeks to dial in and rewrite and do all of those kinds of things. So I found for my personal productivity on, an owner task side, building process, writing, scripts, email scripts for people, ad copy for, your website, I use it heavily for SEO stuff, for schema markups and all of those kinds of things. I'm using Claude now as well for some of that. So a little more, I think, advanced level, but where I've found a fit for AI is kind of for myself as I don't call it a personal assistant, but basically a technical writer that I can just dictate the high level. It pumps out the pages. All I have to do is read it and tell it where I want things fixed. And that has saved me an enormous amount of time and allowed me to make the decision, yeah, I'm going to tackle this project that I probably never would because it was weeks long and it just wouldn't get done.
Absolutely. There's no garage door company, no company, period, will grow without SOPs, a
Yeah.
standard operating procedure for every task that is done within a business, whether that's replacing a spring, winding a spring, interacting with the customer right when you walk up to them, answering the phone with a smile, of course, things like that. So you guys, you have all of those. And so you took that and then put it into a custom GPT. So this custom GPT is almost like it's almost like a super nerdy employee that knows everything about your business because you uploaded all those SOPs. And now, because it's got all that information about you, when you ask it to write, hey, write me a process for our newest CSR to call the database reactivation leads that Andy generates for us. That would be a task that would be really easy for your custom GPT that you've invested, time and effort into, for example, right?
Yeah, that would be one that would be very easy for it because I have a written process for responding to the leads that you generate through the Felice marketing system. And so if I just simply needed, say, because what we've started doing is we'll make the phone call. If they don't answer, we also send them an email directly as well. And so I just did this the other day. I just went into that custom GPT and I just said, hey, for database reactivation, I need a script that I can send, make it generic. I just want to insert the customer name and it's for database reactivation. And it knows because I have listed out what all our specials are and special offers and what it's tied to in the documentation. It's able to just perfect on the first go because we've already built up all of that. So basically the Chat GPT, custom one is basically an expert on anything that I've given it. So I have it turned off where it can't access the internet. So it only knows my SOPs. That's it. And so there are times where I'll say I want to make X and it either won't be right or it'll ask you questions. Basic, case scenario where, hey, I don't know this, so answer these couple of things and it'll put it in. But your example you just brought up is something I did not too long ago and it just boom. And you can tell it, make it sound like Master Yoda or make it sound professional or make it whatever you want, so you can really kind of hone it and it'll remember the way that you've had it right for it and it'll get to know you and what you're asking it. And so you won't even have to make those minor tweaks, going forward. And this stuff is like exponentially just getting better. By this time next year, it's going to be wild.
I couldn't agree more. The conversations I'm having with other people that are smarter than me about AI, it's kind of overwhelming, to be honest. But we don't need to get into that right now. I'm really glad, to hear how you guys use AI because it doesn't matter what type of business you have. AI fits into all businesses. It's just a matter of us, the human, kind of learning how to play with this fire that we just discovered in the cave. It's not much different than that. But I did want to give an example because I did something similar with the custom GPT. I hired a new employee and we're very specific. We're very detailed. We're pretty orderly about how I'm just very type A. That's really what it comes down to. But we put all this information in the custom GPT. My new employee, I've hired quite a few employees. Usually the first 2 weeks is just, hey Andy, hey Andy,
Yeah.
hey Andy, ask every question. I made this new employee that custom GPT. It had our rules and regulations, just our employee handbook, a bunch of stuff in it. And I had AI help me make all that stuff too. It's kind of a circle, but he never asked me a question. He never asked me a question in 2 weeks. We just had our weekly meeting and any question he had, I told him just ask the custom GPT first. And it gave me so much more time. I know that's not just a marketing agency thing. That can be applied to a lot of different things.
Yeah.
So it's an easy way that AI can help a garage door company. And one of the things that we do, I just want to give a quick plug on how we do things with AI, because we want our customers to get engaged in it too. And we're going to help shepherd them. And so we always say, do you have SOPs? One of the first meetings we have, do you have SOPs? No, you don't? Okay, these are the SOPs that you need to make. And then I show them mine. And I show them these are the real SOPs that I've created for my business. Here's the SOP tracker. There's 4 tabs on it for each stage of the process of the business. And once they have them, they go out and they do them. We don't do them for them. We help them make this custom GPT so they can start getting their feet wet. Once they have that, set them loose and they can be creative. And so that's one easy way that we like to help our customers really start to use this thing that's not going anywhere. It's only going to get more ingrained in our day to day.
That's awesome. And I think the place that, like the one that I said was a fail for the technicians, I'm about to implement one for CSRs. And I think that it's going to be 180 degrees different for CSRs, because sitting in the office and I'm trying to do X, but I can't. So I need to ask a question. They can immediately just go over to Chat GPT. With technicians, it's different because they're working with their hands and they're doing things and they're just filling out invoices. But anybody that you have in your company that's tied to a computer, a custom GPT like that is going to be super, super helpful. And you can make individual ones too. So, you could make one for, if you have an inside salesperson in the office or your general manager, he needs all of the stuff, but CSRs, they only need their scripts and the procedures that pertain to them. And I think that's why probably for you, it's been so successful as well, because you guys are more office oriented, right? So when I said that what I did before was a fail, it was a fail in the way that I was using it. And I think I said that, but I think that there are other ways like you're using it for, which are awesome, that are very successful and will just free up tons of time. I mean, one of the main one of the main things that, talking with Nigel, and he's really helped me, develop and go through and do all this stuff. But the main goal was to make my cell phone ring less. And that wasn't just because I didn't want to take all the phone calls, but if it was ringing less, that means everybody was being more efficient and knew what they needed to do. So that was kind of the scale. And it's definitely helped with that. It's the future, and everybody needs to be looking and figuring out how they can implement it. There's also a lot of products out there too, like Rilla, that are a AI-based app that are, it's very specific, the purpose for it that we've started using that's been, very helpful. I don't know if you want to get into that, but I would encourage people, even if you never plan on building your own custom GPTs or finding ways to implement it, play with it, understand at least how it works, because a lot of the products that, are coming out and all the products that will exist here in the next 5 years are going to have AI built into it in different aspects. And just having a basic understanding of what it is and kind of how it works will be huge when, you have to interact with this stuff, or when you're talking to, a vendor that's trying to sell you on a product that has AI, and understanding how that works with the system. So even if you're, even if you're just totally, not into AI and you hate it or whatever, play with it, understand just kind of how it works and the basics, because you're gonna need to know.
Yeah, that's well put. Well, we're coming up on about 45 minutes for this recording. It's just flown right by. I've got a couple like rapid fire questions that we're going to start doing at the end of each of our podcast episodes. It's asking you 3 things. The first, and I'll say them first, and then you can give your responses. The first is your favorite software or a software highlight. I know you use ServiceTitan.
Yeah.
So, that's, if there's something that's newer, that's hotter, more exciting in your world right now, whatever. So a software highlight, the best policy change that you made, and one thing you wish you knew looking back 5 years. So 5 years ago yourself, what's something that you do? So those 3 questions, if you could give us.
I would definitely have to say ServiceTitan. Software is kind of a necessary evil kind of thing. It's like love-hate, And so ServiceTitan is a big monster of a software. It's not cheap, but once it is set up, it does everything. I don't need anything else. I mean, everything from the phone call tracking to recording it, to dispatching the call, to getting paid, to sending the invoice, to sending out reminders for, service for next year, to requesting a review. I mean, it's literally a full circle software, and it has been game changer. And the more that we have implemented and used all the pieces, the more it's kind of pulled us from being that one, that mentality of one guy in a truck into being a process driven company that does things in particular ways. And the way, I think about things, I wasn't raised to be a business owner. I didn't go to school for that kind of thing. It's not rocket science, but you're not geared for it because nobody ever, taught you how to do it. Right. And so it's this constant learning curve. And so that software has helped with that. But more than anything, it's just once I can check how one of my technicians is doing this morning, ticket average, everything you would possibly want to know over a quarter or across one job today. So I would say software wise, I think that has been the most impactful for our company. For policies, most impactful, that's a hard one, and especially because every day for the past 3 months I've been updating or adding or building, and so I love all of them. But I think the most impactful to the business and revenue has really been that adjustment to time that we talked about. That has taken some buy-in and has been hard. Well, I don't want to say hard, but once I've broke our technicians of running and gunning, they love it. So a lot of our guys come in from other companies and they're constantly stressed. I got to get to my next one. My office is calling me why we're late, and really making our technicians understand, through policy, that they're never late. So unless it's your first job, okay, you can be late to your first job. But after that, you cannot be late. Like, it's not a thing. Your only job is the one that you're at. Getting the buy-in from the technicians and making that adjustment on that, I think, has probably been the most impactful across ticket averages, reviews, customer experience, all the things that really drive everything else. So I think that has been probably the biggest policy adjustment if I had to pick one. And what was the last question?
Advice you'd give yourself 5 years back.
Yeah, so 5 years back, and this is probably even good advice for me now, but there's people that'll come to me and say, hey, I'm thinking about starting X, or I have a friend, he's 3D printing some gear and he's trying to figure out what he should sell it for. And it's a server rack thing that he's doing, right? And what I told him is the one thing I'm constantly telling myself, and I wish I knew or really understood 5-10 years ago, and it's set your pricing where it needs to be. Okay. And what I mean by that is, in the past, what I would do is I'd call all our competitors, I'd find out what everybody else is charging, and I would set our price somewhere in the middle or near the bottom or whatever it was, right? And obviously it needed to be higher than what I was paying for it. But that's what I would lock my price into, is what everybody else is charging, what is competitive. And after realizing I need to charge what I need to charge, and what I mean by that is that I need to be able to make a certain amount of profit. And to make that profit, there's a certain amount of overhead, and then there's the cost of it. And so you need to look at, what are your overhead costs? What are your material costs? What kind of time does it take up? You got to take in, opportunity cost into consideration as well. But you need to set your price at a place that makes you the money that you want to make. And if it's too high, then you find a way to do it cheaper. And I mean, find the product cheaper, negotiate a better price, make the process better so it's more efficient. Do what you have to do to adjust those things, but don't set your price based off of what everybody else is doing and where the market is. And I think you'll find if you're running your business even, halfway competently, you can do that and still be well within range of what everybody else is charging. So, we've started to do that. We're still about mid. I could afford to probably raise our prices 20% and we're still going to kill it. We're not going to lose customers because of that. And so I think that was the main thing. Once we started doing that, that's when I actually started seeing net revenue. Before we would see big numbers for the time, 600,000 in a year, but we got 5% net revenue.
Profit.
Yeah. What's the point? If you're doing that. So setting the prices where they need to be is what I would tell myself 5-10 years ago. And I would explain, what that means, as I just did.
Absolutely. I think a lot of garage door company owners I don't know if they don't take it into account or if they don't see it or what, but the private equity space has injected themselves so deeply into the garage door industry in the last couple of years. We see it very clearly in average ticket. Average tickets are increasing. And a lot of that is because lead costs are increasing
Yep.
each year. The cost to generate a repair or a replacement, it increases. And this old school way of doing 7 jobs in a day with an average ticket of $300, that is
Yep.
ancient history
That's
now.
right.
Like that is not happening. People and also the world is changing. Like people feel differently. People when they bring somebody into their house, they call, garage door company come work on their house. Really what they want, in my opinion, is they want to feel like they did a smart thing.
Yes.
They want to feel like they did something good. And that's why, like, something we do, Stuart, for some of our new clients that are with us at a certain package level, program level, is we do a 90-minute sales process training where I get all the employees, everyone on Zoom, doesn't matter what city they're in, everyone's on Zoom, and we talk through this and we just work on improving it because that average ticket, it's got to be at least 1,000. You're at 1,100, a little bit more than that. You're saying you can raise your prices 20%. I agree with you. I definitely think you can increase your prices. People won't be too stressed about it. You're in A1's backyard. I don't know if a lot of people
Yep.
know that. So everyone knows what A1 charges. It's a little bit more than average. We can say that conservatively, but that's the way the whole world is going. We need to make people feel like, oh, you know what? I'm not just going to replace that one spring. I'm getting a hardware rebuild package. Oh, good, better, best for the hardware rebuild package? Yeah, I want the best because I want them to be quiet rollers. I want reinforced hinges. I want that kind of stuff. And it makes people feel good at the end of the day because they just bought the more expensive package and they connote that with value. And that's just how it is.
Yep.
That's human.
There's studies that show, technicians with the highest ticket averages have the highest positive reviews. It sounds counterintuitive, and I can speak to this coming from a guy in a truck where it's really just all about price, and and I'm still making good money, and if you're someone that's happy with that, kind of a setup, I'm not knocking it, but I'm getting older and older, and I'm not going to be able to turn wrenches forever, right? And so sometimes there's an aversion to what the big guys are doing, right? And I don't consider ourselves big guys, but A1's a good example. Especially in the industry, you'll have some people that are just like, oh, they're ripping people off. They're not. They're not ripping people off. Tommy's done a great job at really elevating the industry as a whole. And I'll talk with new technicians that come in and they'll say things like that sometimes, and I don't engage with them because I'm trying to, I don't care about Tommy. There's nothing, personal there. But I want them to understand why they charge what they charge and why we charge what we charge, right? So, you can call A1 at 2 a.m. and someone's coming, right? You have nationwide, training and things like that for all of their technicians. All of that adds to that overhead. And you know what Tommy's doing? He's charging what he needs to charge in order to offer that kind of level of service. There's some people that aren't willing to pay for that and they don't need the benefit that he's offering. And that means they're just not his customers, and that's okay. And the same thing needs to be true with every other business owner. Your customers might be the ones that are looking for, just the least expensive, just get it done bare minimum. And that's where you're going to aim towards. And if you're happy and you carve out a niche there, then that's great. There's no, I don't want to say wrong way to do it, as long as you know what you're wanting to do and that is what you're focused on making that happen. Then if it's right for you and you're making a living, then it's good to go. But the pricing, you do have some companies that will just charge absorbent amounts and it's not right. But that's far and few between. I really think the industry overall, when I first got into it, I used to joke we're the redheaded stepchild of repair. And I really feel like over the past 10 years, the industry has really been elevated. And I feel like that ethically, the generation, that's taken over is probably wired on average a little bit better in terms of that. Not that any of the old, all the old school guys were unethical, but like you said, culture has changed, right? And the way that people do business is a reflection of the way that culture is, and exactly what you said. People want to feel certain ways, and that wasn't the way it was in the 90s and in the 80s, right? It was more brass tacks and that kind of thing. But it's a whole separate conversation that I find very, very interesting.
I couldn't agree more. My my background, psychology and marketing. So that's just
Okay. Yeah.
all right up my alley, man. Stuart, we've been on for a good amount of time here. I want to be respectful of your time. Thank you very much for coming on and being a guest of ours. Is there any final words you want to leave us with before we close this out?
I mean, I'm a talker. I could go for hours, but I think we covered a good amount of info. I want to say thank you to you as well. I mean, you've been a big part of helping us grow. There's a lot of companies that do marketing. I think you do it very well. What I especially appreciate is that when we talk, it's not just here's the numbers, here's a bunch of techie stuff. You spend the time with me 10, 15 minutes on those calls to have very similar conversations that we just had over the past hour, and that's been very helpful. I hope it works both ways. I mean, you started talking to me about AI. I started running with it, giving you the feedback, and you're implementing those things. And so you're not just a vendor of ours. I mean, you're someone that I'm able to bounce things off of, a consultant to a certain degree. Now, I don't want to add to your services or people's expectations, but that's been my experience, and I really appreciate that. And that's been very, very helpful for us through this last year of working with you.
I appreciate those words, and really, that's what I'm intentionally trying to do with our business is position us as more than just a marketer. Because in my opinion, getting these very competitive lead costs that we've consistently gotten for our clients on PPC, on Meta, organically on SEO, it's not rocket science, as we both have been saying. Like it's not. So if I can add value with AI, with process, with how to sell better, that's really what I'm trying to do. And I'm glad that it's being received that way. So, Stuart, thank you again for joining us. I appreciate your time. And that's it for today's episode, everybody. So thank you very much, Stuart.
Thanks, Andy.